Yeah, hello and welcome to this video about round 8 of this year's Tata Steel tournament. Let's get going. Again, interesting round. Yeah, some really exciting fighting games. First of all, some words about the games that I'm not going to cover. I'm not going to cover the games Kayakin So, which was a very solid draw. Hare Krishna Vai, also pretty solid draw. Vendveli Nepomniachtchi was a very long fighting game, which also ended in a draw. That could have been something that you could have shown, but there's just so much in the other games. I don't want to, and I don't want the video to be extremely long. So let's get going with the game Elyanov Wojtaszek. And again, e4 by Elyanov. He really has broadened his opening repertoire, playing all opening moves now. Got a Sicilian knight off, as Wojtaszek usually plays, and bishop e2, the classical continuation played by Geller and Karpov. It should be called the Geller system actually, but it doesn't really have a name. It's one of those lines that probably will never get completely out of fashion, and it is very logical and solid. White is going to castle short quite quickly, play with f4 oftentimes. e5, knight b3, and we see this line. This has gotten into some fashion in recent years. The idea in itself is of course known since Geller's games back in the 60s. White puts a knight on d5 and wants at the end to get this pawn structure, the 4 pawns here against the 3 pawns, and wants to advance those pawns, trying to build at the end a passer on the queen side. This is a very, as I said, classical strategy that is still played as we see to that day. It feels it feels slow actually. If you look at this, White is building up there. Yeah, but it will lead invariably to very sharp play, because White with this expansion threatens to suffocate Black, and Black has to find counterplay. And we see with f5 the counterplay is coming. So f3, check, traded, f4. So Black is really putting his hopes on this g5 attack. This has a definite resemblance to the King's Indian. White on the queen side, Black on the king side. He moved the knight here over to e4 here, and those knights get traded. Now we see this in its purest form. 4 against 3, and White will very quickly here push ahead. How to evaluate this position? It's very difficult to do actually. Even if you use a computer for help, it's really tough to say how this should be evaluated, because the Black attacking chances should never be underestimated. I mean, I've been checkmated so often in the White side over King's Indian. I really know from experience that, I mean, this, the queen coming, a knight, the f-pawn, and so on, this is dangerous. On the other hand, White's attack here is fairly quick. So we have c5, queen g5, and c6. Yeah, here, if you give the engine some time, it wants to play rook b8 and actually evaluates the position as roughly equal. I don't really know what to make of that. I'm very unsure. I know the engines are tremendously strong, but it's difficult to say. Does it really feel, or does it see the engine some kind of perpetual coming on the horizon? It only is clear that the computer does not like this move. Bishop takes a6 and g3. This seems to be not enough. And if even with the human eye, we can see quite quickly, if we go ahead a couple of moves, that probably Black's attack is not quick enough. So here, check. White has to capture. Oftentimes you see White, or let's say, it doesn't matter if it's White or Black, that the defender uses this pawn as a shield rather than taking it, it wants to, you want to keep it on the board, even though here knight h5 g3 looks a bit problematic. So it does make sense to just take it here. And I mean, if you look at this, it feels like white should be able to defend this, if you ask me. The pawn structure situation on the king side is clarified, so an attack would probably be based on pieces, and it doesn't feel to me that there are enough pieces for black, even though there's a rest of uncertainty there. Yeah, d5, trying to make it as complicated as possible. Black is sacking this pawn to get the knight into the game, to f5. Here d6 was played by Alyanov. He wants to speed this up and irritate the knight here. I mean, he wants to make this piece take on d6 is what I'm trying to say. This was not played after queen d5 check, knight back. This is just too passively placed. And I mean, if white is not getting checkmated, he will win with the queen side. Yeah, even if you lose a piece in the process, quite often you will win because the pawns are so far advanced. Yeah, this is not a good line for black. After d6, he played the check and now took with the queen. And Alyanov did this on purpose. He didn't just blunder the pawn. This is winning him some time to coordinate.
Check.
He checked here on c4, king h8, and b5. This is, I think, a very logical play. The engine suggests some improvements, but this is, I mean, if you just if you look at such a game with both players having limited time, and you look what an almost perfectly playing computer is saying, you're a bit missing the point, because between humans, nobody's going to play this perfectly. It's just an extremely difficult struggle where the better calculator will probably win, or the person with the better nerves. So, I mean, the computer will find all kinds of improvements, but it's completely unrealistic to expect those moves to be played on the board all the time. Rook g7 was played. That that certainly makes some sense. And we see rook g3. There are ideas for counterplay quite clearly. Rook d1 was played. And knight d4. Looks completely normal, this move. It seems that maybe queen c5 was a little bit better. But okay, knight d4. Yeah, and here in this position, are that my notes? Yeah. Sorry, in this position, for example here, the computer here wants to play the move king h1 and says that this is quite a good idea for white. No human being is going to play that move. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. What Alyanov did is perfectly logical for a human player. He identified the knight as being dangerous and just took it. Based on the fact that trades, I mean, okay, I know this is a rook and this is a knight, it's not an even trade, but that trades actually help white to avoid getting checkmated, and the pawns will win on their own accord if you're not going to be mated. Queen d3, this is a perfectly logical idea. You want to trade queens, and of course black should not. Played queen c5. Queen b2 is a little bit clearer. Yeah, you're going to threaten mate immediately. And this is after bishop d5, f3, leading to a draw. Bishop takes, e4. I know it's pure computer, but this is something that a human player can find, because it's fairly logical to drop those two pawns to activate everything, and now you've broken down the pawn formation here, and it's it feels quite reasonable that this is a draw. He played queen c5. This still seems to be okay, just computer wise okay, but it's far more difficult. Rook f3, Good defensive move. And now queen to e7 was played. Yeah, it seems that rook f6 was better. But, you know, they are not computers.
Check.
Check. Black can go back. Queen d5, queen e7, and this is coming. Yeah, so that was better. Queen e7 and bishop d5. It makes sense, eh? Blocking the pawns and preparing b6. Queen g5, rook h3. Yeah, and here black probably should have played f3, similar to what we've seen before. White is probably better, but the result of the game is hard to predict. Yeah, I mean, it's such an extremely sharp position. He should probably drop this and then, oops, not this one. Play rook d8, trying to activate this. When he played this, he probably underestimated. Oh, sorry. Queen f3 was the move. Queen f3 was the move. Move 40. Yeah, and with this, White is avoiding the tactic that happened in the game. That was, yeah, very easy to overlook. Yeah, here White has consolidated. He's controlling e4 now, and the winning idea, well, is very obvious. In the game, he played this immediately, and now Black had a save, like just about a save. e4. And at the same time threatening mate. That's quite important. Yeah, there is no c7 or something like that. Yeah.
Checkmate.
White has to take, and now f3, amazingly, clearing this path with a check. There is a check. White has to take, rook takes, and now c7. Yeah, I mean, black has won this piece. c7, trying to promote. Yeah, and now check. Queen e5 is just about to draw.
Check.
And it's check. A perpetual here. White can, of course, not avoid this. Yeah, rook check. d1, white gets checkmated. Yeah, what a dramatic position. Yeah, white has those pawns, and black just about managed to draw. I know I did not analyze this in extreme detail because, you know, you can analyze these positions and quote all those computer lines, but nobody is going to play this kind of thing perfectly. And it just would feel, I think, wrong to criticize the players too much for what they did. I think it was a great fight. And a draw is not an unfair result in any way. I think it was just a great battle. The next game I want to look at is the game Adhiban Andreikin. Yeah, Adhiban is starting a winning streak. Yeah, he was down like -2 at the bottom of the table, and then he won games against Carlsen and Wojtaszek. And today he had white against Andreikin. So, what do we have? King's Gambit again? No, knight c3. The Vienna game with g3. This is an interesting opening, by the way. Like this, or even, I'm sorry, knight f6, g3. This is an interesting opening line that I can recommend to players who want a full strategic battle with white, with very little theory to learn. So that's not bad. White is trying to build up slowly with this and maybe later go for f4. Not bad at all. I mean, black can equalize, but it's something different and absolutely a good surprise weapon at least. Yeah, Andreikin played knight c6, not knight f6, and again g3. They played a symmetrical kind of setup until Adhiban went f4. The white setup looks a little bit like a closed Sicilian, but black, okay, has a pawn on e5. I think the first couple of moves felt very logical. And I should get my notes. Yeah, felt quite logical. However, after, here we go, bishop e3. c5, queen d2. Now it really looks like Sicilian quite a lot. Queen d2, castles, knight f4. Yeah, now Andreikin decided to take on f4 and allowed this trade here of the bishops. This is always going to be a little bit dangerous for black without that dark squared bishop. However, it shouldn't be a fatal weakness. It still is something that I wouldn't enjoy so much with black giving up this bishop. The king is a little bit insecure, and also you lose a little bit of grip in the center, like the knight on d4. So he took it and invited the queen over to h6 in a way. So he has to be very, very cautious now that there is no knight coming to g5, for example. At first he handled this okay, I think. Here with b5, typical move in this kind of situation. That got pushed back, and now rook f1. Yeah, and the next couple of moves, I think, somehow go totally wrong for black. I feel that this is already a little bit uncomfortable, if you ask me. White's position is a lot easier to play, and he has a straightforward way of continuing. He has got the knight on c3 is not that great. If you can move it, for example, like this, or in the game he went knight b1 and so on, if you can improve this and get it towards the king side, then it definitely can become dangerous for black. Also, this piece might be expelled with c3. It feels a bit passive, black's situation. He played queen d8, and this is probably already getting him into some issues. Knight d1 now would have been fairly strong, going over to e3, potentially even having knight f5 in mind. This is getting very dangerous for black. Instead, Adhiban went knight b1. The idea here is c3 and knight d2, f3. Oh, that was a wrong arrow. I didn't want that. Maybe try this route. And the next move now is definitely putting black into huge issues. Maybe you should have played something like king h8, some defensive move. But he went to d5. And this move, it just feels very illogical to me in a way, because after knight d2, white will get the knight to e4, either after taking, black taking on e4, or white taking on d5. So why did he allow the knight to be activated like that? I mean, black's position is not nice, but I think this helped white tremendously. Yeah, he now took on e4 even, and knight takes. Yeah, and now you see white threatens mate and this, and both at the same time. That's not going to work out. He tried knight f5, but here white has a simple recipe. Just take it. Take it.
Check.
Yeah, okay, we have to. I was a bit quick. So take here. So what happens after the other captures? Bishop takes.
Check.
Just wins very easily. Or the pawn takes, the
Check.
immediate check.
Checkmate.
Things like that are happening.
Check.
So this is the best try, but now we can do a simple count. White has two knights, active knights, for a rook. f5, and yeah, knight takes g6 was also possible, but knight g5 is just simple and good, threatening the mate on h7.
Check.
And this ending is just winning for white.
Check.
Yeah, he's got knight and bishop and pawn. Yeah, and a position where the pieces have good,
Check.
yeah, good positions, good outposts. Let's say the bishop is very safe. The a pawn is strong. Yeah, he did a good job
Check.
now, just going for the ending. A pawn got rolling, and you can even ignore this as a2 is covered. So here a7, the pawn promotes. Rook c1, knight g2. Yeah, knight c2 is a nice little trick. I mean, it wasn't necessary. You can also win just by pure technical play. But this is still nice, yeah? It covers this. So threatening a7, if black takes a7 again, promotes. Pretty neat, yeah?
Check.
Black played the check. King e3 takes. But white is quicker. And now white checks first.
Check.
Check. Has to go to f6.
Check.
Check again. Has to go there.
Check.
And bishop f7. Here white has a forced checkmate, like this.
Check. Check. Checkmate.
And mate. So yet another win for Adhiban. He now has won 3 games out of the last 4. And with +1 is all of a sudden in the top half of the tournament table. Great turnaround. And a good fighting game. A little bit, I mean, I don't quite understand what went so terribly wrong. Here it still felt fairly normal for black. And I think probably the combination of getting the queen into h6 and then queen d8, d5, those moves, that was too much. White was just activated too much by this play. Okay, the next game I want to check is the game, where is it? Aronian Giri. Remember, Giri had this marathon game in the round before where he miraculously escaped this checkmate by the world champion. Somehow that Carlsen didn't play. So what happened today? Aronian is white and we've got a Catalan opening.
Check.
Giri goes for the closed defense with the check inserted. And now c6. So one point of black's play here is to give this check on b4 to get the bishop to d2. It is usually argued that the bishop is worse on d2 than on c1, as white quite often wants to fianchetto it. Aronian now plays a really uncommon setup, or let's say a new setup, that at least I have not yet seen in a game. And it seems to be new. Knight a3. Just put the knight there. Oftentimes, white moves the bishop, for example, to f4, to free the d2 square. He just put the knight there to develop with a quick rook c1. That's interesting. What this does is that it asks black about his plans for the c8 bishop. The normal way for black to develop this piece is to play with b6. If you do this now, white might take and now use the c file quite favorably. For example, knight b5 is an immediate idea, but after a6, the knight cannot jump into c7 all that comfortably. Yeah, so it's not that easy, but white can do this. Trying to play bishop b4 maybe, trading this piece, and still having knight b5 as an option. That's an interesting way of developing the game. You can also play bishop f4 c7, of course, this idea. So against b6, it feels like white has interesting play. Giri went knight e4, also pretty common place in this position, or these position types. And bishop e3 now by Aronian. Yeah, this is an absolute key point of the game, where Giri now decides to change the pawn structure in a radical way. He took the knight and played knight to d6. Quite interesting. With the double pawn, the c4 pawn now is without any support, and this provokes white to play c5. It turns out that after knight c4, Aronian just took this, and if you look at his spent time, it's clear that this was part of the preparation. I mean, he's certainly also a kind of player who could sacrifice the exchange here without having prepared this at home, but judging from the time spent, it was clearly something that he had seen before. So queen c2, h6, covering against knight g5s, queen c4. White has a pawn for the exchange. Black couldn't really go b5 in this situation. After knight g5, you see that this is immediately hanging. So h6, queen takes c4. White has a pawn for the exchange. He's got the bishop pair. And this is the main point. Black's pieces are extremely passive. The knight here is very passive, and especially the bishop. And White now has a very easy game. I think this is already a very nice position for White, that also computers quite clearly under or misevaluate a little bit. I think White is better, and it's especially difficult to play with Black. So the computer gives White a slight advantage, don't get me wrong, but in a practical situation, this is terrible for Black. Yeah, you're super passive and you have no clear plan what to do. b6 tried by Giri, and now Aronian gets the bishop over to d6. Very simple. This is very simple to play. With White, you just play all the natural active moves and expand. Yeah, knight e5. And here, yeah, look how passive this is. Trade it. Good idea usually, yeah, to trade, making things simpler to defend. But the White position is just too active. Yeah, look at those. It's a terrible position for Giri to play, and Aronian is playing quickly. It's very easy to put pressure on Black here. Yeah, now he's shifting his attention towards the king side. Yeah, it's almost a full exchange, you know. This is not really a pawn, but what are the rooks doing? I mean, bishops can be extremely strong if they can use their long-range capabilities. And here we see the bishop. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong button. The bishop switching over here, yeah, being aimed towards the king side on one of those positions. And the bishop on d6. I mean, this is just better than a rook. Rook b7, of course not trading, keeping the pressure on. White does not want to trade one of his pieces. That's absolutely not good. In this position, actually, the queen trade was giving White a pretty big advantage, but it's not a good idea practically, because you see already that with this bishop geared towards the king, there will be chances to attack the king. And if you can do that, you should keep this opportunity. Okay, this is good though, but it's just better. Keep the queens on, keep the pressure on. This is just more annoying. The bishop on the a8 will never defend the black king. This is important to understand. White is attacking here with two bishops basically against the rook, as the a8 bishop doesn't count. So he's just lining up everything. Yeah, black is doing this to prevent e4 to e5. And this is absolutely terrible situation. He has given back the exchange, but white is just attacking here. Again, this is a bishop down. And now the black rook cannot move because of the checkmating threat on g7. When did he resign?
Check. Check.
I can give some spy checks, but
check.
Here it's over. Yeah. So a very clean and very convincing win by Aronian. I think this is probably a combination, or this game resulted because of came up because of two reasons. Giri's very tiring game in the round before, 120 something moves, and coming back from the dead. Of course, you can say he's he escaped defeat and so on, but it's still a pretty tough experience sitting there in a lost position for the whole time. And the second thing is, I think he stepped onto a real mine of an opening preparation. Aronian had a fantastic position after the exchange sack, and it was extremely difficult to defend. And you probably, maybe he can defend this when he's at his absolute best, but that is not likely to be the case after the game from the day before. So, final game to cover is Rapport with white against Magnus Carlsen. What did the world champion do? Rapport plays That is solid for his standard. And not bad, of course. Why should this be a bad opening? It's the Queen's Indian something reversed. And in fact, we get very quickly a position with g3 that is usually coming up via a Reti opening move order with knight f3, c4, g3. This is actually a position that I've had on the board myself quite a number of times. What White wants to do in this setup is, ideally he wants to expand on the queen side with b4, maybe queen up, rook c1. He wants to build up and play on the queen side. Sometimes it's an issue for black that the bishop on f5 isn't doing all that much. It looks at this well-protected pawn and has little to attack. This theme of this bishop will come up later in the game as well. Okay, first of all, a5 to prevent b4 and queen b1. One of the typical ways to set this up. I've often played with queen c2, bishop c3, queen b2 in these situations. Queen b1, bishop h7. Yeah, retreating this as a precaution against e4 or knight h4. And yeah, here Rapport immediately played the move b4. That's not a very common motif, but of course it's absolutely playable. Carlsen took it, and now we have to check what happens if black captures on b4. If he takes on b4, of course, bishop f6 is a tempo on the queen, so I'm winning a piece here with white. Black cannot take this. Instead played queen to b6. That's also perfectly okay. Bishop c3, covering this now, and taken on a1. Yeah, so what about this? Can black take on b4? Yeah, this is what Carlsen played. You don't have to do this, but if you don't take on b4, you have to reckon with white playing c5 and gaining space. So I understand why he took, just avoiding this long-term bind. The move rook b1 now can be answered with bishop takes, so that does not work. But white with this sequence can regain the b7 pawn. So what did happen? Yeah, we have some trades. We had some trades there on the queen side, and other than that, it's hard to believe that some side here could be better. The black bishop is not doing much here, looking at a protected pawn, but the white bishop certainly isn't doing that much either. Yeah, it's looking at a wall of pawns. That should be somewhat equal. Carlsen played e5, playing actively. I mean, he definitely wants to try to do something in this game, so e5 is certainly an interesting move. However, it gives white a little bit more with this bishop, as now the pawn on d5 is not that securely defended. Yeah, Rapport is playing this interestingly now, not staying passive or waiting. He played d4. Initiating a crisis in the center. So what should black do? You can, of course, look at e4 here, gaining space, but after knight e5, this looks quite nice for white. The bishop now is looking at his own pawn, so that's not great. And white is also intending to play c5. Look at c6. This is a pretty weakish pawn. So e4 is probably not a good idea. What Carlsen played is fine. He took this pawn, knight takes, and played c5. This is a good way of doing this. The knight is attacked and now went back to b3. Knight b5 doesn't really do all that much. It looks more active, but after queen e6, this is also hanging. So this is a good move, and Carlsen played d4, gaining a bit of space. Yeah, so what did Rapport do? Bishop h3, yeah? Looking at the d7 knight. We have to check this position because it is an absolutely critical moment of the game. Note that Carlsen has played quite quickly up to this point, and now went on with the move d3. He played this after a very long thought, and this makes it all the more mysterious mysterious is a strong word, but I mean, first of all, if he plays something simple like this, he's just okay. Yeah, white can take this, black captures. There is no reason why this position shouldn't be equal. Yeah, pieces are somewhat equally active and there are no particular weaknesses on either side. So he decided to avoid a solid continuation and played the move d3. Okay, what does Rapport do? He just plays e3. Simple reply. And it's a bit difficult here to see the upside of black's play, because the pawn on d3, okay, it's a passer, but it's very, very securely defended by the knight on d2. And it's not clear what black's big achievement is. However, the real issue, I think, starts with the next move. I mean, I think white is a bit better now, but after knight e5, I think Carlsen gets into trouble very quickly. Bishop g2 is a good move by Rapport. That bishop did not do anything anymore on h3. With the bishop coming back, he's looking at the critical long diagonal covering the f3 square, and white has a clear idea now forward to push e4 and f4. Note that with playing the pawn to d3, that bishop now looks like a real dummy. And that doesn't look good for black. The awkward thing is, if you ask the computer, it wants to play now the only move that black can play without getting into immediate disaster, basically, is to play the knight back to d7, where it came from. And this is not a move you want to play, and a very human player, I mean, is very reluctant to do it. This is not a matter of pride, it's just, it feels like, okay, that makes it like a total failure. Can we do something else? And Carlsen tried to play rook c8, but after f4 and e4, we see how awkward this is. e5 is a big threat. And what is exactly is black doing here? Yeah, he has absolutely no active play. Those pieces just look active. They don't do all that much. Yeah, the knight here also has very little squares to go to. I mean, e3 is a possibility, but if white covers this, where is the knight going? This position is already winning for white, if you ask the computer, and it looks terrible. e5 is coming. Carlsen tried rook e8, and then e5 played by Rapport. Yeah, why not? Takes, and white is a piece up. However, it takes some precision to make a full point out of it, and Rapport is up to the task. He's a very good calculator. Rook b6 now is a very nice move. Looking at the queen. And yeah, I mean, black, what Carlsen now does, it does not work. But there is nothing that actually does. So he played this.
Check.
Check. Yeah, and now Rapport has seen with rook b6 now the winning combination or the winning sequence. Bishop c6 is very strong. Looking at this, and I mean, look, the king cannot escape. Then bishop on h7 is a really unlucky piece. And rook takes e8 is almost mate, yeah, and winning the queen. After check. Rook f1, rook e1 check, white could sacrifice the check. Queen, and now play knight f1. And it's a really unlucky spot. Rook takes e8 again. It's almost checkmate. So the queen has to give up itself, and there's no way out. d2, white just takes it, and there are no checks. The knight is the king's best friend, is a famous saying, and it really often is the case. Yeah, king f8, rook e8.
Check.
And yeah, white is just a piece up and will win easily. So, Rapport beating Carlsen, yeah, with an interesting game. And I think also a game there where we see, similar to Giri's game, this has a clear connection to the game in the round before, where he missed a mate in 3, and it really feels like here he didn't want to play something, something normal in a way, something that is likely to be a draw. He wanted to continue and fight with d3, but that just seems to be a strategic mistake, as it turned out in the game. Yeah, this is something that happens to Carlsen once in a while. He sometimes just wants too much. Yeah, if you look at Jonathan Rouse's famous book, The 7 Deadly Chess Sins, Carlsen sometimes has this wanting to win, wanting to do more than the position warrants. Sometimes he has that, not like all the time. He's of course a brilliant player usually, but sometimes he loses this, sometimes this sense of objectivity, what you can try to do and what not. And here d3 just didn't work. I mean, Rapport played it nicely here with this bishop g2 and f4 and so on, but it wasn't exactly rocket science. Yeah, it really wasn't. So I think this game has to be seen in clear context with the round before. What does that mean? Carlsen is down to just a +1 score, and it will be difficult for him to do something in the tournament. Yeah, he's 1 point now behind Wesley. So, and I mean, he's the kind of person who can come back from such a rotten game, but doesn't look all that great. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the coverage of round 8. On Monday there will be a rest day, so players will be back on Tuesday, when I will also do the video for round 9. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.